we were on mute. It's all good. We're back. 20 seconds of it. That's probably a record for me. All right, this music's horrendous, but I am here for it. Yeah. Sorry if you were here for my 5 o'clock video. Fortunately, I can't use the back system very well. I'm trying to learn it, but I decided to just go live instead. Get this content out to the people. The people need to hear about Shadow in the War, or as I like to affectionately call it, Shadows in the War. Wait for a few people to come. Put in the comments if you do arrive. I'd love to say hi. Yeah, we're going to talk about shadows. The reason why I chose to do a video about shadows is because I've had a few people come to me or comment in the chat and just say, well, it's just a bit rubbish, isn't it? It's just a bit rubbish. Not very good. And I have to say it's a hard disagree from me. I think it's pretty good. I'm a big fan. It's actually my favourite rule, I think, for nits. So we'll see how that goes anyway. See what you guys think. If you're in the chat, do comment on what you see. Tell me what you think about the wonderful world of Shadow in the War. We will kick on and stop that awful music. All right, let's go. So, first of all, actually, I just want to quickly say a few things about. We've had successive videos over 1,000 views now, so thank you so much. Like, that means the world to me. I got into this to do and speak to people and meet more people and have people see the content and have people watch it and comment on it and come up to me at events is just amazing. Now, I know loads of people who do videos do these kind of really cringe thank you things, but honestly, like, it means loads to me. So please come up to me and talk to me at events. I'm more than happy to talk about Tyranids with anyone. And most of all, just thank you for watching. Of course, if you want to hear about more videos we do, like and subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. And yeah, let's get on with the video, hey? Let's do it. So how does Shadow in the Warp help you in a game? This is the biggest thing about any rule within Tyranids or within any army. It needs to help you win the game. And what I kind of see a lot is people compare Shadow in the Warp to other faction abilities, other faction, rules and things like that. And what do other factions get? Well, they get things like direct army buffs. Yeah, I want Oath of Moment, please. Or I want the new Sky Splinter thing where you get +1 lance and things like that. And I mean, there's some of those are detachment abilities, some of them are armor abilities, but it's all kind of, for me, they're very interchangeable. But yeah, so some people will get a buff, like Oath of Moment. Some people will get a debuff, like the Death Guard rule, which is really cool. It stops your opponent, it gives your opponent debuffs, which is, again, super cool. We don't get that. We don't get dice manipulation either. We can't just put a 6 on something like Sisters or Eldari. And of course, that's a very powerful, very in-your-face mechanic. And you can imagine a lot of people are like, hey, why don't we have something as powerful as that? Well, we don't have that. And that's absolutely fine. It's not movement shenanigans either. You're not teleporting across the board. Unless you're maybe Vanguard Onslaught a little bit. But generally speaking, you are not flying across the board to do things. Of course, what do all those kind of buffs do? What do they actually do for your army? Well, they empower you to score points. So they might help you with Oath of Moment kill a vehicle if I bring it down. Or they might help you teleport across the board to get behind enemy lines. Something like that. They empower you to achieve something. They might remove an opponent's assets so they can't score. A weird way, but it's denying scoring points, which is great because we know it's a resources game. So they kind of give you the ability to score points. What do they not do? They don't directly affect the score sheet itself. It doesn't directly say, oh, you scored less points this turn. And that's why I like Shadow in the Warp, because if you do it in your opponent's command phase, you will deny points straight up. There, bang, they've gone. They are not coming back. In the same way, it can help you score points the turn after. So once you do it in your opponent's turn, if half of their army is battle shocked, then you just score the points in your turn. Like happy days. What else can you want? That's pretty awesome. So that's why I like it. For the key point of it, the reason why I like it is it helps you score points and it stops your opponent scoring points. The downsides are that it's kind of meta dependent. Not many other faction abilities are this meta dependent because it all depends on the leadership characteristic. So I mean, maybe Chaos Knights, I suppose, but if you think of it as, if the last meta orcs were really good with a low leadership, but then this meta it's custodians and necrons, well, suddenly our faction ability got a lot worse because everyone in necrons and custodians, if the necrons are led by a character, they're all leadership 6, and that doesn't bode well for an army that's completely about leadership, right? So it makes the rule a bit worse. So it's kind of meta dependent. It's therefore opponent dependent, so it depends on what models they take. It's kind of out of your control as to how powerful this mechanic is. It encourages spamming of synergy units. So, for example, Neurolictors are so really good because not only do they cause battle shocks themselves, they really benefit from Shadow in the Warp because you get to have more impact on folk. Um, Also, things like Death Leaper becomes even better. A Neuro Tyrant is pretty much, I would guess, in about 80% of lists right now. So it kind of leans into that quite heavily. The other side of it is as well, another downside is your opponent can play around it. So how do they do that? Well, they and quite directly as well. You can't really play around Oath of Moment. You can't really play around dice manipulation. Well, you can a little bit, but like it takes big brain, right? You can easily play around Shadow in the Warp. You can put multiple units on an objective. You can have modifiers to leadership like guard orders, so that you reduce their leadership to 0, but then they get +1 to the leadership, so they're actually a OC1. Your opponent could sticky their objective. The most annoying thing of all time. You sticky the objective. No, you do shadows and then they go, oh, that objective's sticky, mate. It doesn't matter. Like, oh, that hurts. That's a not spicy meatball. MSU builds offer options, so even though you might shadow in the warp, there's actually ways they can react to resolve the issues you've given them. And then, of course, there's so many armies putting things back in reserve. I say so many armies. There's a few armies putting things in reserve at the end of your turn. Of course, if you put something in reserve at the end of my turn, then in your command phase, it's not on the battlefield. I can battle shock it, which is super annoying. Um, Same as well, if it was battle shocked and then it goes into reserves, and then is in reserves through the command phase, it actually loses battle shocked as well. Outrageous, absolutely outrageous, but it's a rule. So putting things back in reserve actually diminishes how good the ability is as well. So what I'm trying to say is, I really like the rule because it directly affects the score sheet. However, your opponent and the meta can take things out of your control a little bit, play around it a little bit more. So it's interesting, it's powerful, and your opponent should be worried about it. But there are things they can do to get around it. All right. Next slide. What to think about when deciding if you want to shadow in the warp this turn. So I was thinking about this quite heavily. There's a few things I definitely want to do. I'll think about when I'm doing shadow in the warp. So the first thing is the mission. So what mission are you playing? There's one that I love the most, which is priority targets. I love it for shadow in the warp because I try and leave it until the last turn. Because in priority targets, you score at the end of the game, depending on how many objectives you're on, and that can be a big swing if, for example, your opponent's gone second. You know what they don't want to see? Their entire army battle shocked, because then they can't score the points. And you can, which is really nice. So my big advice when you think about missions, write it down in your tournament pack that you take to the event. Hold off. Do not try and not to do it early. You might think to yourself, oh, but I might deny them 5 points now. Believe me, at the end of the game, you'll deny them more if it goes well. So go for it. There's other use cases as well. So like the ritual, I had an interesting game at the last week against Necrons with Hypercrypt. My opponent couldn't get anyone near the middle to actually create an objective because I'd battle shocked them. The only model that could get there was the Nightbringer, and he made an objective. which felt real good. So the Nightbringer had to do it. So there are things you can look at the boards. You can look at the board state and kind of say, okay, who can actually score points this turn? And by all means, take the time, right? You're in your turn, you're thinking to yourself, you're trying to get through everything, and then you take a big breath at the end of your turn. Get into the habit in their command phase and going, right, what are they going to do? How do they score points? Which we'll get onto secondaries in a minute because that's a super important one. But if it's the rituals, like, okay, who's making that objective? Because if they get battle shocked, that's a lot of points lost. Vital ground is also very good because there's only two objectives. So if they've got one unit on one objective, like that can really, it's already a low scoring mission. If you actually deny them points, oh, that hurts, man. That real hurts. And then servo skulls. I don't play servo skulls. Do you? Have a great time. I imagine this helps. But they all have use cases. I'm sure there's other ones as well. But those are the ones I kind of think off the top of my head. So that's the mission. The mission is what I'm thinking about. Then I'm thinking about primary. Okay, it's a if it's a two objective mission, and they are on both of them, what's the chances of me actually taking them off one? Because that's a 50% loss that turn in primary, which is really big. Usually. Do they have, and then that kind of links to the next point, which is how many units they have on those objectives. If they've got if it's a whole two mission and they have two units, one on each objective, that gives you good chances. Imagine it's taken hold and they've got three objectives and there's one unit on each. That is teasing. That is luring you into Shadow in the Warp, and that should be really fun to watch when they fail two battle shocks. So that's something else I'm thinking about. The board state, of course. So can you force multiple battle shock tests on your opponent's units? This links to something that I tend to do with Shadow in the Warp, which is I try and leave it as late as possible. Ideally, I don't want to do it in turn 2, turn 3, because you might think to yourself, well, there's more units to battle shock. I can get more value for my money. But then also, you could argue it the other way around. They've got less assets later in the game, and therefore every battle shocked unit actually means a lot, especially like turn 5 when they want to score primary, things like that, or turn 4 when they want to score primary. If you can stop that and then either catch up the score or extend your points differential, that really changes the game. Whereas if you do it early and you make a little gap in points differential, your opponent has the ability to catch up by making crazy plays or swapping a bad secondaries round or what have you. Right, you're giving them less time to react to your points gap. Of course, here as well, can you force multiple battle shock tests on your opponent's unit? So if later in the game, which is what I was trying to get trying to say before I got on a tangent, a lot of units will be damaged, maybe some of them below half strength. If you can make them do Shadow in the Warp, which they can't auto pass, then do another battle shock test after, you've just got more chance of being successful in what you want to achieve, which is battle shock those units. So again, another kind of reason as to why you want to leave it later. And then I think this is where the last bit here is actually where I think is most important, because you can see your opponent's secondaries before you decide to Shadow in the Warp. And that is really empowering. You can actually look at it and go, hang on, you've drawn attempting target and deploy teleport homers, or attempting target, let's say, and engage. Who's doing those things, right? Engage isn't on this list for some reason, but engage should be there. Who's doing those? And you can take a second in their command phase to just figure it out and go, put the time on me. I just want 1 minute to figure out who's doing that. 30 seconds, you don't even need a minute. And you'll be like, okay, well, that unit can do that, and that unit can do that. Okay, those are the only two units that are going to achieve this secondary for them. Okay, now seems like a good time to battle shock. Because if they don't do that, that's like some of these are so easy to do. Secure no man's land, right? Generally quite easy to do, like extend battle lines. If you can just battle shock 2 units or 1 unit that could have got them a 5 and that goes to a 3, that could make the difference at the end of the game. So not only are we denying primary and then scoring primary afterwards potentially, but we're also potentially knocking off 2, maybe 5 points of their secondaries because the units that we're going to do secondaries with are battle shocked. The power of this rule is so strong, guys. Like, it can be so good, but honestly, you've got to take the time to think, how do I achieve it? How, and don't rush into it and go, oh, shadows. Just like, what secondaries have they got? What primaries? What's the chance of this happening? And if it's turn 2, you're probably looking at it and going, well, no, it's fine. Turn 3, as soon as you get to turn 4 or 5 and you start seeing some of these secondaries come up, and the opportunity to deny primary, the impact will be so strong. So that's my kind of 10 cents on how I'm thinking about when to do it. Of course, I'd love to know what you guys think. Put it in the comments. How to stretch the efficiency, yeah, of shadows. Now, obviously, you're all Tyranny players. You know what these are. But I just wanted to bring it up because it's quite interesting. And I'm going to just pop over here for a second so you can see the entire screen. Leadership debuffs are big when it comes to shadows, especially at the moment, right? Because everyone's got leadership 6. So you're dropping in a Neuro Tyrant, there's a -1 leadership buff to everyone taking the shadow in the warp when you've got the Neuro Tyrant on the board. Of course, one of the big considerations of when to do shadow in the warp is if someone's about to kill my Neuro Tyrant. If someone's about to kill it, I'll just drop it. I'll be like, yeah, go shadow, because it's so like that -1 is so important. But yeah, I do. I have a Neuro Tyrant in every list pretty much because I just love the fact that this does the -1 and the impact is so strong. Death Leaper. Obviously, Death Leaper has a 6-inch aura of -1 leadership as well. And what Death Leaper does is, because it's got loan up and it does all the loan up things, I think, and it's a lictor, it tricks you into thinking something. It tricked me into thinking something. It tricked me into thinking it's a valuable trading tool. Um, or I should only be trading this for like a character, or I should try and keep it alive until something good comes along. And then I'd run it into something good, like, yeah, let's go. And then he would die a horrible death. What Death Leaper is a -1 leadership debuff that you can run into your opponent's army around, like, with a few units around it after holding an objective and being loan up and doing weird stuff. When you're ready to do it, advance into the opponent, into like a group of opponents units, or even charge a rubbish unit so that you can still be like within 6 inches of all the rest, and then just in your turn and then their following turn press the button, shadow in the warp. They're all -1 leadership. That I genuinely think is how you convert Death Leaper's 80 points into victory points, essentially. Of course, you'll also trigger extra battle shock tests, because if you're below full strength, you'll also take a battle shock test. It just adds up. Death Leaper is a just go and get him loan up that for one turn like will score you points and then dies, and it's the best. It is a really good use of 80 points. So yep. And then Neurolictors just add that additional debuff to your opponent. It increases the efficiency, not directly to the scoreboard, but to trying to remove opponent's assets, but also keeping your assets alive. And that will actually come really important on the next slide, which is just so key. The next slide, guys, I really want to pay attention to the next slide. But before we do that, Custodies, obviously very big leadership guys at the moment, very big in the meta, but also really good leadership. With a -2 leadership buff from Death Leaper and the Neuro Tyrant, they will fail their battle shock test 59% of the time. That's awesome. That means there's no fight on -1 damage. There's no fight first. All of that in the bin. See you later. Awesome. So, think about Death Leaper, think about your Neuro Tyrant, and make sure you're using them the right way. Right. Next to the most important slide, and I will die on this hill. The most important slide in this presentation, guys. Should I use it on my own turn? No, never. Don't do it. There's never a good time to do it in your own turn. Never, ever. If you do it in your own turn, you probably should have done it in your opponent's turn before, realistically, because you'd have just got more value. Oh, but you might say, well, I want to kill this thing. It doesn't matter. That doesn't affect the scoreboard. You might kill that thing. When has ever killing one thing won you a game? Never. Just do it on their turn, and then the next turn you'll get the efficiency. Now you might say to me, Dave, well, it's easy to say that. I can't think a turn ahead. I sometimes cannot either. So what do you do instead? Well, you can do it the turn after, and we'll go through this. I've done a little bit of a example here. So let's have a look at my weird example here. You've got the orange bar, which is all the turns with the total VP you're going to score on primary at the end. And then you've got player, my opponent, which is future biomass, and me, your boy. So turn 1, we score no primary. Turn 2, we both score 10. I'm just imagining we're both scoring 10 every turn. If I do it in my turn, which is represented here by the sweating scared face, or sweating nervous face, maybe. If I do it in my turn because I want to score 5 more points of primary, awesome, I get 5 more points of primary. and I've got a gap of 5 points. Happy days. That's great. However, if I did it in their turn, say their turn 3, if I was clever and had the foresight and said, right, 5 point, if I'm going to do it in their turn, and they fail one battle shock test, just the same as the last turn, because we're saying there's one unit on each objective in this example, they're going to lose 5 points. But I also might score another 5 because I could get someone on that objective, or maybe the objective was contested or something like that. So maybe I score my 10, or maybe I score a 15. You know what I mean? If I was just on 2 anyway, and my own 2, I score the 10. If not, I score the 15. And then the gap becomes 45. 10 potentially, which is so much better. And you've got 2 turns of those efficiencies because those neurolictors are giving -1 to hit. You're getting +1 to wound just for a longer time. So definitely, in that sense, try and do it the turn before you think you're going to need that big turn. Of course, you might say, Dave, well, I didn't have the foresight. Now I want to do it in my turn. Just do it the next turn. Because if you do it the next turn after, you just get those benefits just later. Instead of going all out and trying to kill that one thing you need to kill that will win you the game, play more defensively, pay more KG, move, block, do something like that if you can, and just do that same thing the next turn. And you'll get the benefit. It'll just be so much stronger. We asked the Discord, like, give us an example of when you've done it on your turn over your opponent and you've had better impact or more success. You've had value that you wouldn't have got on their turn. And the guys have been awesome. They've really racked their brains. But we can't find a good excuse to do it on your own turn. So don't do it on your own turn. So overall, to summarize, Shadow in the Warp, it will help you win games. It will deny points to your opponent and score you points. That's the point of it. Think about your opponent should be worried about it. If you think about it, put yourself in your opponent's shoes. You're in this game, and your Tyranid opponent can make every single unit in your army take a battle shock test any turn they like. That genuinely is scary if you've got stratagems that you've built your army around, if you've got primary that you need to score, if you're custodians and you've got one unit on every objective, that's actually genuinely a scary prospect. Think about the mission. Of course, we mentioned priority targets, but there's other ones as well. Think about how that is affected by this rule. There's other missions as well. Primary scoring, what's the differential on primary at the moment? If I do it now, what will happen? Can I extend my gap here? Of course, it's not going to work every time, right? But you've got to assume that it will work. Otherwise, what's the point in even doing it? The board state. So am I going to trigger multiple battle shock tests here so I can really get what I want to achieve? And finally, I think the most important one that maybe I know I certainly didn't think about this until recently, what secondaries did my opponent get? You can wait until they've done their entire command phase before they do any battle shock tests, like in their battle shock step, and just say, okay, now you've done everything in your command phase, I'm just going to do it now. Because that's how the rule works, right? You can actually get all the information, what secondaries they need to score, who's got orders, blah, 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 blah. Bam. There we go. We'll do Shadow in the Warp. And that way, you're just going to get the most efficiency. So take a breath in your opponent's command phase before they move on. You say, sorry, just before you carry on, I just need to decide if I'm going to do Shadow in the Warp. Give me 20 seconds and we'll go. Cool. And set up for a successful Shadows, a turn ahead with debuffing units. Really think about, okay, if you are going to, and you might get into a rhythm. I've got into a rhythm of doing it generally around the 4th turn. Drop Death Leap it into the right place the turn before. Make sure your Neurolict is not dead. Neurotyrant, sorry, is not dead as you're about to do it. Things like that. Just get prepared and go, okay, this is the turn I usually do it, and what am I getting? What am I gonna do to prepare for it? Don't do it on your own turn. Just don't. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, I just don't know when to do it because I've got no good times to do it. Everything's been rubbish so far. Like my opponent's played around it. If they've gone second, do it at the end. If they haven't, still maybe consider it turn 4 or 5 because they're going to run out of assets. It's going to be more, as games go on, sometimes they'll get closer, sometimes they'll stretch out, and you'll be able to use this rule hopefully as a tool to claw yourself back into the game, extend your lead, bring a little gap between a very, give you a bit of a buffer between in a very close game. There's loads of ways this can be used. Say loads of ways this can be used. It's used to score points. It can be useful in any game, is what I'm trying to say. Like no matter the score, it will either extend that lead or help you claw it back. And that is this. I say very short, 25 minutes. I mean, that's not too bad. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. I'm going to go to the questions here, the board. So let's have a look. Boom. Just started building and painting my first in his army. Found your content after appearance on Hellstorm's tournament coverage. Yeah, being great to devour whilst hobbying. Well, thank you very much, Riverside Managers. That's very kind. I'm really happy you saw the game and enjoyed it and thought that's a guy I want to hear about more. After I was a fun sponge, so according to the chat. So great to hear. Thank you very much. All right. I'll just move it to this so you can see the screen a bit better. Right. So it depends. Was Magnus or Be'lakor the one thing? Right. Okay. So are we saying that, I need to kill one thing? Magnus or Be'lakor, I need to kill them. I mean, I think if Magnus or Be'lakor is only one model, it can only be in one place. Admittedly, Magnus can be in any place with his moving around shenanigans. But I genuinely think if you use this rule to score points and not try and kill something, because you need to kill Magnus. So you think to yourself, I'm going to Shadow in the Warp so I can absolutely murder Magnus. So what do I need to do? I need to do Shadow in the Warp, and then I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to hope that it fails a leadership test at minus maybe 2. So that's a 40%, 41% chance. I don't know what his leadership is. I think it's 6, but let's say it's 6 and it goes to 8. That's a 41% chance. It's nearly a coin flip, and then all of a sudden they pass, and you kind of go, okay, cool. I guess I've wasted this. Whereas you could have used it at a really key moment to battle shock everyone, right? You could have looked at it, waited, and until models are on certain objectives and done it in a different way to score points. Killing one model on a leadership test coin flip, I just don't think is a very good use of this rule, personally. But I get your point. I do get your point. Sometimes you want to kill something, get your exocrines out and wound on 5s. I know. Cool. Well, thank you very much, clever invective. Chris Richardson, how do you think Shadow's maths changes, if at all, when dealing with armies that put multiple units back into reserve with Hypercrypt and Grey Knights? Man, I hit this the other day. I've hit it twice, actually, once at the Goonhammer Open and once in my local league. And man, it's super annoying because especially when they get all the benefits of going in. So once they get all the benefits, but none of the drawbacks. They don't have to take battle shocks if they're not on the table, but they lose the battle shock effect if they're off the table. So like if they were battle shocked, then were picked up, they become unbattle shocked in their command phase. Super annoying. But it just is. That's the impact, right? And I think, like I said before, our rule is very, I think, different to a lot of other army rules because the meta itself impacts how useful it is. With Oath of Moment, you're re-rolling hits. That's pretty good against anyone. But if half your army's not on the board because of shadows in the warp, and when you shadow in the warp, then that becomes less impactful. If everyone's leadership's 5 or 6, it's less impactful than when people are leadership 7 or something. So yeah, it's very reliant on the meta, but that's the way it is. I mean, still, man, even if something's leadership 6 and you -2 and it's a 41%, and they're custodies, so they've got, I don't know, 8 units, 10 units. That's 5, 6, maybe 6 of those units are failing. It's a good place to be. But with things teleporting, yeah, it's real tricky. I suppose. Yeah, there's no way around it, right? There's no way around it. But thanks for your question, Christopher. Is it possible to get your Discord link? It's in the description because boy did something clever. Yeah, it's in the description. Go and have a look. Only cool people, please. We have a good vibe in that Discord. Where someone said today it's a much cooler place to share ideas. So come and share ideas. I'm looking for more content on Vanguard Onslaught. Played it once already, and the other detachment seems less fun. Vanguard Onslaught, 100% is I think the coolest detachment in the entire book. I love it. I'm trying to think of. I mean, I don't see myself playing it anytime soon, to be honest, because I'm trying to nail an ending swarm, and it's like a trout. I keep trying to catch it, and it wiggles away. What I would say is there was a teams list recently. I can't remember which event it was, and it was a Vanguard Onslaught list with pretty much no Vanguard Onslaught units. It had, I think, a couple of bricks of zone throps, loads of exocrines, loads of maliceptors. I think a non assimilator. So I think what the tech is, you use the CP to bring in the non assimilator turn one, get the plus to your charge because that's what a normal assimilator does when it shoots the harpoon, and then you get the extra. You get the extra to charge. I think it's +2 to charge. So all of a sudden your 9 becomes a 7, and that's more doable. You can also pick up the bricks of zone throps, teleport them around the board. So there's cool things you can do there. So I definitely consider that at the moment because I think that's, even though you're not using any of the cool units, it's an interesting way to play. I'm definitely interested in playing it later in the year maybe, but it's very cool. I think, unfortunately, with the meta the way it is, it's a very thankless army to be playing. The Vanguard Onslaught detachment, because all the cool, like, we're sneaky, we're lone hopping, things like that. In reality, like, Custodians will just walk across the board and punch you in the face. Necrons will just score more points than you and reroll hits and get close enough to do damage you. So it's pretty tough to play at the moment. The meta will always change. So let's see what happens later down the line. The play style to be a little like Unending Swarm. Oh, I think you mean Vanguard Onslaught. No, I think if you watch my video on it, the I think Vanguard Onslaught is very much like you are. If I think about it in boxing terms, do I look like a boxer? I'm certainly not one. But if you think, I always imagine the guy who's ducking and weaving, making their opponent wear themselves out, pull them out of position, things like that, and then you strike at certain points when you need to, when the odds are in your favor. Like your warrior brick will go into the asset that you need to die, so that you can then be in a better board position and be on more primary. The gargoyles are holding your opponent back, keeping them, using the boxing metaphor, keeping them away with a jab, I suppose. Whereas an ending swarm is very much like, I'm going to be on the table now, and wherever you want to go, you can try, but I'm going to be there already. I managed to screen out my 3/4 of a table against Hypercrypt the other day, which was quite funny. Watching my opponent's face go, but where am I supposed to teleport? And I'm like, probably where you were stood originally. That'd be cool. So it is different. It is different. Also, I mean, the only similarities both detachments have is it's very difficult to kill anything. That's the only thing I would say. I mean, Vanguard Onslaught's a bit easier. Don't get me wrong. JP, you babe, another awesome book watch video. Well, that's very nice. Thank you very much. Cool. So just a reminder, guys, our Discord link is in the chat below. I'm on Instagram as well. I've put that below as well. So by all means, give me a follow. And cool. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any ideas on what you want to hear, this entire video was given to me by a chap in the commenting on the last video about how he just didn't like Shadow in the Warp, and I wanted to share why I really liked it. If you have anything that you want to hear about, it might just inspire me to do a video like that chap did. And again, thank you very much for watching, guys. I'm over the moon that you guys watch, and it just makes me the happiest boy in the world. Have a great one. I will catch you later.